Buckle in, sports fans. You're listening to The William Haynes Show. The program will be starting in just a couple of minutes, so grab your popcorn and get ready to enjoy the show. While you're waiting, make sure you're following us on social media at WHBC Stream and staying tuned to WHBCStream.com. We're so glad to have you today on the program, and we'd love to hear from you. Drop us a line on Twitter or call the show 352-639-0036. And thanks again for tuning in.
HBC. Well, it is a good evening to you and how you be. William Haynes here, you there, here at 9:05 on this Wednesday night. Of course, the William Haynes Show is live from the WHBC studio in Tallahassee, Florida. Not too much to discuss today. Really, the main thing, a little bit of a post-game show, if you will. The Rays losing 4-2 to the Washington Nationals in 10 innings this afternoon from Tropicana Field. It was an opener day, a double opener day, really, for the first time, at least that I have seen. Josh Fleming coming up behind him, so was an interesting as far as the strategy with the pitching and everything. The offense was a little bit stagnant. The starting pitcher for the Washington Nationals, DeVoth, he had an ERA of about 7, and over 5 innings, the Rays were only able to scratch out a run against them. So that's just a little bit of a lead-in, I suppose. Not really much else. No NHL tonight because the Western Conference Finals have already wrapped up. The Stars will advance to the Stanley Cup Final, and this is the off day for the Lightning and Islanders series. The game went final in double overtime, 2-1 in favor of the Islanders, so they'll force a Game 6. So the Lightning still hold a 3-2 lead, but they're going to have to win one of the next two. And no NBA and no, obviously, NFL, no college football. So none of that, really. We've got the Phillies and Mets on the monitor, but not really a whole lot there. It looks like Jacob deGrom might have gone down after a couple innings of work. Michael Wacha came on for the Mets, but that's neither here nor there. We're really just going to spend some time talking Rays. There's only a couple series left. They're going to have a 5-game set in Baltimore, and then they go to New York to play the Mets for 3 games, and then they return home to Tropicana Field for a 3-game set with the Philadelphia Phillies. So they're going to have their chance there to make a run at the American League East title, something that they have not done since 2010. We look at the AL East standings right now. It looks like the Rays are 3.5 games up on New York. The Yankees, who have won 6 straight, they are playing the Blue Jays tonight. I believe it was the Yankees 20-5 over the Blue Jays last night. So a Yankees team that was 500 a couple of weeks ago. It looks like they're kind of returning to form. They've gotten Giancarlo Stanton back. It looks like Aaron Judge is on his way back. Obviously, Garrett Cole. They have the bullpen all set with Ottavino, Britton, and Chapman. So they're not going to be an easy team to face, and who knows if the Rays will most likely end up playing a wild card team, so I guess maybe the hope is that the Yankees take second place, but then you'd basically be lining yourself up for the Toronto Blue Jays, potentially the Cleveland Indians as well, because as we are speaking right now, it's the Chicago White Sox with the best record in the American League. I believe there are 1 or 2 games up on the Rays. So who knows if the Rays will end up coming back to take that 1 seed after a really, really nice month of August for the Rays. They have dipped under 500 for the month of September, 6-7, and they only lost 7 games in August. And here we are only halfway through September, matching that mark. So this particular month has not been super kind to the Rays. They had that series in the Bronx where they put the shellacking on the Yankees and secured that 8-2 season series victory. And then after that, they took 2 of 3 from Miami, and then it got ugly. They lose 2 straight in Washington. They split a 4-game set with the Red Sox, and they split this series here today. So not so great. I'm not loving the way I feel about the Rays right now. They're gonna have some things to tighten up. Brandon Lau played very well today. He went 3 for 4, also worked a walk, so he reached base 4 times. His average is up now to 270, right around there. And with the Rays down to their final strike, they were down 2-1. It was Brandon Lau launching a home run into the seats to tie things up, and they lose in extras. We'll talk about all that just a little bit later. Before we get into all that, as this really just is kind of a pure Rays post-game show, would love to hear some of your guys' thoughts, not just Rays thoughts, but if you want to talk Lightning, Bucks, we can do that as well. The Lightning and Islanders Game 6 will be tomorrow night at 8 o'clock, and looking forward to this Sunday. It will be at 1 o'clock, the Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers hosting the Carolina Panthers in Week 2. Of course, the Tampa Bay Bucks 0-1 after that loss in New Orleans. So anything Tampa Bay sports you want to discuss, we can talk about it. No real live sports right now to discuss, so kind of just Tampa Bay. But again, the number to call is 877-566-1020. At WHBC Stream is the Twitter. We'll take a break in about 10 minutes and come right back with you and obviously talk some more sports. So I guess without further ado, we can just really dive deep down into this game and tell you everything that went down. For the win, it was the reliever, the closer, Daniel Hudson for the Nationals. He actually had a blown save, but because of the weird extra innings, he gets the win. Nick Anderson, the loss. We'll talk about that. It was just a pitch that got a little bit away from him. So that was not great to see. In McGowan for the Nationals, who's only appeared in, I think, 5 games this year, gets the save. For Washington, the Tampa Bay Rays dropped to 31-18. As I said, they have a 3.5 game lead for first place as of now. But it looks like if the Blue Jays win against the Yankees tonight, it'll stay 3.5, and then if the Yankees win, it will go to 3 games proper. So. Not a huge lead. There's only a couple weeks, obviously, left to play a couple more series. I think that 5-game set in Camden Yards will be very telling. They're going to have to play, as I said, a Mets team that's probably going to have to be playing very hard to scratch out a playoff spot, and who knows what the Phillies will be like now. I think they're a game above 500, and they're in a playoff position right now. So they're going to be, after that Orioles series, who the Orioles play them tough always, they're going to be playing 2 National League East teams that are going to be trying to scratch out a playoff spot. So not necessarily teams that are going to lay down, but even we've seen the Rays have not performed so well against last place teams as the Nationals take 3 of 4 against the Rays this season, which not great to see. For the Rays, the way they lined up, I'll give you the defensive alignment first. They made a couple pinch hitting and defensive subs, but from the outfield from left to right, it was Randy Arozarena starting in left, Kiermaier in center, Margot in right, and then the infield from third to first. At third base, it was Joey Wendell. Willie Damas played shortstop. At second base, it was Brandon Lau, and Nate Lowe was the first baseman. It was Michael Perez that started off doing the catching, and the DH was Austin Meadows, who led off, and obviously we know the starting pitcher for the Rays, the opener, Pete Fairbanks, who gave them an inning of pretty decent work. And the way the lineup ordered, it was Meadows to lead off, Brandon Lau second, Randy Arozarena third. It was Nate Lowe doing the cleanup duties, which I wasn't huge on going into the game, but he performed quite admirably. Was intentionally walked twice and worked another one of his own. Manny Margot batted fifth, Wendell sixth, and then a 7-8-9 of Adames, Kiermaier, and Perez. So on paper, not too bad of a lineup, but over the course of the game, they scored 2 runs on 7 hits. It was really more of the same. They go 0 for 11 with runners in scoring position and leave a total of 11 men on base. So something that we've seen all year. I mentioned it even with yesterday's win. That's been the plague of the Rays all year. The reason why I think they've been able to win so many games, not just the pitching and how much they've kind of, made a good push to keep the Rays in this thing. They get more base runners seemingly than anyone in the majors. They hit a lot of singles, but don't be confused. They have some pop in the bat too. Probably middle of the pack, I would say, in extra base hits if I had to put my finger on it. But also with the walks, they just get on base a ton of base runners. But when they're struggling, they struggle to score runs because they can't move them over. I've never this year in the 60-game season seen a stretch of the Rays where they can't get men on base. It seems like they're always able to do that, and I think as we look ahead to postseason play, that's a good thing that they can get men on base. I think the Rays a little bit better this year at drawing the walk. I think that's more towards the new age that Eric Neander, the general manager, Kevin Cash, the manager of the team, that new direction that they're trying to push the Rays in. It's all about putting men on base. That's kind of the metrics. That's what it shows. You can't necessarily buy the home run hitters like maybe the Yankees with Giancarlo Stanton and the Dodgers with Mookie Betts and Bellinger and all that. We can't really buy those kind of players. We're not going to have anyone that hits 50 home runs a year. So what do? Just get 1 through 9, a lineup of guys that can get on base and hope occasionally you can move them over and bring them across to score. And today was one of those days where they just didn't do that. Again, 0 for 11 with runners in scoring position and a total of 11 men on base. In comparison to a Nationals team that scored 2 more runs than them on the same amount of hits, they went 1 for 4 with runners in scoring position and only left 5 men on base. So the Rays had more base runners and more scoring opportunities, but it was just the Nationals that were able to capitalize on some key moments. I didn't like how the pitching staff was managed today for a couple of reasons, and we'll get into that over the course of the show. And I guess we'll start there. It was Adam Voth going for the Nationals. Again, we told you the ERA of around 7, so you think if he goes 5 or 6 innings, the Rays would be getting maybe 4 or so runs off of him. Instead, no, he goes 5 innings of 1-run ball on only 4 hits. He walks 3 men, strikes out 6. And starting for the Rays, the opener, Pete Fairbanks, gave him a clean inning, gave up a hit but 2 strikeouts. His ERA is under 3 after a rough outing a couple of days ago. So I guess without further ado, we'll talk inning by inning. This afternoon's Rays lost in extra innings. Top of the first, Fairbanks opened. Trey Turner reached on an infield single, but that's it. He got Eaton to strike out, Hernandez to ground out, and Soto to strike out. Bottom of the first, the Rays strike early. I don't have this stat exactly right, and I regret that, but they were mentioning, I think last night on the broadcast, that after that final game against the Yankees, where they nailed Jordan Montgomery, I'll get the stats up right there. If you remember that game on September 2nd, that came after the September 1st game where Chapman threw at Brasso's head, and there was all that kind of trash talk. Kevin Cash, we had the whole stable of guys that throw 98. You remember from all of that. And the next day, the Rays go on and hang 4 runs in the first inning, and that was kind of that period in August when the Rays were really just hammering everyone. But since then, I believe they've going into today, they've only scored in the first inning in 1 of their games. So that's what I mentioned earlier this year when the runs were not as quite coming across as often as maybe we would have liked. It was they just weren't scoring early enough, and scoring first with the pitching staff that they have is huge. We saw that last year. They get to 96 wins, all of that. They were a really great team really throughout the season. They had a couple of rough patches, but when you're able to score early and then have the really good rotation and a lockdown bullpen, you can bury teams early in contests, so good on them. They were able to scratch out a run, but just 1. Meadows popped out. Brandon Lau flew out, so guess what? It's more 2-out Rays action. Rosarena gets hit by a pitch. He was hit by one last night, too, so I'm not sure about that. Nate Lowe hits an RBI double. It was a slicer down the right field line. They got all the way back to the wall, so good on Nate Lowe, the cleanup hitter today, going for extra bases to make it a 1-0 game. And Margot, who had a very rough contest today, this is one of the more interesting, I guess we'll say, stat lines this year. 0 for 5, 3 strikeouts. All 5 of his at-bats came with runners in scoring position. 0 for 5 in that category. So if you want to pin something on the Rays only scoring 2 runs, there you go. And that was the first instance. It came early with Margot striking out with Nate Lowe. standing at second base. So they start the first inning with only a run, but they get on top. Top of the second, are we talking about a double opener? Fairbanks comes out, Ryan Thompson comes in, something we've not really seen before. I think after the game, Kevin Cash just mentioned he liked the matchups a little bit better. He wanted, I think, Fleming to start off and face more towards the bottom of the order. Fairbanks only faced 4 men, so brought Fairbanks to face what ended up only being 3 batters. He only recorded an out. It was Cabrera, he got to ground out, but then Gomes and Keyboom singled to put a couple of men on with 1 out. So I don't love the move for the double opener. I just told you Kevin Cash's explanation for it, but the meaning of that, and I think Josh Fleming ended up doing fine with it, but he's a guy that's starting pitcher, came up all the way through the minors as a starter, and you want to put him on in the second inning with 2 men on and 1 out. I mean, they're just starting pitching. They don't like coming on with men on base. We see that sometimes. Clayton Kershaw struggles out of the pen in years past with the Dodgers. That's something that's kind of been the bugaboo of his career. Starting pitchers just don't do as good. They have to pitch, I believe, from the stretch instead of from the windup, all those kind of things. I might have gotten those mixed up, but it's a different approach coming to the plate when you have men on base. So they bring Fleming on with a couple of men on, but he ends up doing okay with it. Again, Thompson gets only an out and allowed 2 hits. So after a rough outing his last time out, another one for him. So a really good season for Thompson, an ERA of 4.30, but his last couple outings have been a little rough. In comes Fleming. Garcia moves him over on a ground out to make it second and third with 2 outs. All of a sudden, a base hit would give the Nats the lead. And then Fleming walks Victor Robles, something he really does not do. I think in 4 starts, he's got 4 walks to his name. His calling card is, the low 90s fastball that he can pretty much dot where he wants. But he walks Robles to load the bases and then gets the leadoff man Eaton to ground out. And that was a matchup that Kevin Cash said he didn't necessarily love. And Eaton today goes 0 for 2, ends up getting pinch hit for, it looks like a couple of times. So good on Josh Fleming for getting out of that little bit of a jam that was put in place by Ryan Thompson. A little bit ironic. Thompson's been so good at getting out of jams, and funny enough, he creates one of his own for Fleming to have to clean up. Fleming gets the first hold of his major league career. So that, make of it what you will. Bottom of the second inning, Wendell with a leadoff single, but that's it. Adames strikes out. Kevin Kiermaier grounds out and moves Wendell over to second base, and then Michael Perez, the catcher, lines out. Top of the third, Trey Turner with an infield single, but that's it. So Fleming was working into a groove. Bottom of the third, the Rays work 2 walks and then strike out a bunch. Meadows strikes out to start things. Brandon Lau walks and stole a base after the Rays stole 5 bags last night. That was the only stolen base of the day today for the Rays. Brandon Lau getting his 3rd off of Voth and Gomes. So that put him in scoring position. And then Randy Arozarena strikes out. Nate Lowe is intentionally walked. I mentioned that on the broadcast on WDAE. Kind of surprising to see Nate Lowe already getting that kind of respect. He'd be intentionally walked later in the contest as well. But then you see why. Up comes Manny Margot with a runner in scoring position. What does he do? Oh, he strikes out. So that left a couple of men on base, including one in scoring position. Top of the fourth, Fleming gets another 1-2-3 inning. Gomes to ground out, Keyboom and Garcia to strike out. So, as I said, really Fleming got into a groove pretty nicely today. Bottom of the fourth inning, the Rays strand a triple. Wendell flew out. Adames popped out. Some more 2-out Rays action. Kevin Kiermaier triples against the shift. The outfield was shifted far to the right, and Kiermaier gets one down more towards the left side of the outfield. And to get all the way to third base, up comes the catcher Perez to fly out and end the threat there. They had a man just 90 feet away with 2 outs. Top of the fifth, another 1-2-3 for Fleming. He retired 8 in a row at that point. Robles grounds out. Harrison pops out. And he got Hernandez as well. Bottom of the fifth, the Rays strand a double. You're seeing kind of that trend there, as I mentioned earlier. Meadows flies out, then Brandon Lau hit a double. He had a really good game tonight, this afternoon. His stat line again, he goes 3 for 4 with a walk, so reaches base 4 times. He's also is working a 7-game hitting streak. He's got 3 homers over that stretch, so that gets him at second base with an out. Arozarena strikes out. Nate Lowe intentionally walked once again a couple of innings later, and then Manny Margot pops out to strand the 2 base runners once again. So another similar situation. Top of the 6th inning, Drake gives up the lead in his return. Oliver Drake, we have not seen him in very long. I'm trying to pull up his stats right now because the last time that we saw him was on the 8th of August, it looks like. So he's been on the injured list now for about 5 weeks or so. He only had 5 appearances going into today. A guy that, came into the season, they nicknamed him Everyday Ollie. In a 60-game season, there was kind of jokingly talks that he would be able to go in all 60 games this year. I think that would have been a huge component to this bullpen. Obviously, they've done okay without him, but certainly a missing Lincoln was not great in his return, to say the least. A blown save, which is his second of the year. Drake comes on in the top of the 6th, gets Turner to fly out. Soto is walked, and then Asdrubal Cabrera, 372-foot home run to right to make it 2-1 Nats. I can't necessarily pin it on anything. He threw a lot of splitters. That's his signature pitch, but he throws them up, and that's not necessarily a conventional approach. And I don't know, maybe the Nats hitters were ready for it. It's just not a great day. I think a pitch like that, it may take him a couple outings to get it real sharp. So obviously the hope is it's not really about right now. If you can get him good over the next 2 weeks and get him ready for playoff time. I remember there was I think it was games 3 and potentially 4 in the ALDS last year where he came on in pretty big spots in those games against the Astros and pitched pretty well. So and he gets righties and lefties out. I think Dave Wills on the broadcast mentioned he's the Rays' only lefty specialist that's a right-hander or something along those lines. He's good. His splits are good either way. But there was the 2-run homer to Cabrera, who I believe is a switch hitter. So I don't know if he was. I believe he lined up to the left. So that would have been a pull home run for him. But that, again, made it 2-1 Nationals. And then he struck out Gomes and got Keeban to fly out. So he did get to finish the inning, but he relinquishes the lead in an inning of work. And I forgot to give you Fleming's line. He goes 3 2/3. No earned runs on only a hit and 1 walk. So basically 4 innings, allowed only 2 base runners, retired his final 8 in a row, 2 strikeouts, and get this, 54 pitches, 37 for strikes. He faced 13 batters and threw first pitch strike to 10 of them. So he was really good with the control. Everything looked relatively good, and this, Dave Wills mentioned it. I'll give him credit for that, and I really agreed with him. Most of the moves that Kevin Cash and the Rays make, you can kind of follow along, and you see the thought process behind it. I didn't get it. I didn't get the move to have Thompson come on after Fairbanks. I figured just have Fleming come on to start the second, but Cash gave a reasonable explanation for that. He just wanted the matchups fine. I mean, Fleming's a guy that can start a game just fine. He started his career off 3-0 after his first 3 starts. He was a guy that threw just around 75 pitches in all 4 of his starts going in, so why handicap him at 54 pitches, especially when you have a doubleheader tomorrow to lead off a 5-game series where you're going to be playing 5 games in 4 days against the Orioles. Why wouldn't you want to get more innings out of Fleming? I mean, you think that maybe he could have gotten you it was Drake coming on in the 6th. I mean, Fleming could have gotten you to the 7th or the 8th, so I don't necessarily get that move. Fleming looked really good, so I guess that's a bright spot that we'll take. I would imagine the way the Rays are talking about the opener strategy right now, that's probably where they see Josh Fleming. He took advantage of kind of a weak Marlins lineup to get eased into his career, and then he got dinged up a little bit by the Red Sox. So I think after that, maybe the Rays just are treating him like a rookie Ryan Yarbrough, where a guy that can get stretch innings, and ultimately they see down the line as a starter. But right now they want to have him behind an opener. I don't quite get why he pitched only 3 2/3, and I think, I don't know, you don't necessarily point to the loss today, but you don't love how the bullpen is set up, especially for tomorrow, where they're going to be playing 14 innings minimum in a doubleheader in Baltimore tomorrow. So we go to the bottom of the 6th. Suero comes on and gets a 1-2-3. Adam Voth's day was done. Again, 5 innings, 1 run ball on 4 hits, 3 walks. So they get a total of 7 base runners. And I think if you want to pin it to anyone, it was really Manny Margot stranding some runners in scoring position, something that he has been very good at all year. Brandon Lau mentioned in the postgame that, every time he was on the base path and Margot was up, he was expecting Manny to put the ball in play, as that's typically what he's good for, but he chased a lot of bad sliders, just did not look himself. the Nationals certainly had a good game plan to attack him, and it worked certainly to their advantage. Suero comes on in the 6th, gets a 1-2-3. Top of the 7th, Aaron Loup gets a 1-2-3. Gets Garcia and Robles to strike out and Harrison to line out. So good to see Loup have a nice inning. He finished with just that inning clean and the 2 strikeouts. His ERA is under 3. And they showed his splits. A lefty Loup, he actually gives up like right around a 200 average to righties, and I think a 240, 250 average to lefties, but all the home runs come to the righty. So I guess the splits in that way kind of even. But a guy that I've not been so kind to, he's been pretty decent as of late and gave him a clean inning when they certainly needed it to keep it just a 2-1 game. Bottom of the 7th, Margot lets the Rays down again. Finnegan, the reliever for the Nats, comes on. Perez grounds out, and then you flip it back to the top of the order. Meadows and Brandon Lau, back-to-back singles. Finally, the 1-2 hitters getting on base consecutively, and then that leaves it for Yoshi Tsutsugo, who pinch hits for Randy Arozarena. Randy finished 0 for 2, did score a run on the hit by pitch, 2 strikeouts. So not great. His his average is down to 290, but that's very limited action. So I think it was to get the righty lefty. They go to Tsutsugo, and Tsutsugo finished the game 0 for 2 with 2 strikeouts. So who knows the effectiveness of that. And so with Meadows and Lau on with only 1 out, Yoshi in a 3-2 count strikes out. Up comes Nate Lowe, a 3-2 count, works a walk, had to kind of work himself back into it. And then up comes Manny Margot. With the bases loaded, grounds out. He tried to bunt, and that was good for strike 1. And Wills on the broadcast was kind of slamming him a little bit, saying that he must not feel too confident about his ability to bat if he's trying to bunt to get on base. But I give him a little bit more credit of that. I think that was one of the things, although I haven't seen him say it anywhere, that was one of the things that the Rays liked about Marco, was his ability to put the ball on the ground maybe and give the Rays some potential to play small ball. He's also up at the top in the majors in terms of stolen bases. I mentioned on the show, speed is his best tool, and they've been able to take advantage of that. But with the bases loaded and 2 outs, he lets them down. They're down a run, a base hit, takes the lead, and he grounds out in that spot. He ends up going 0 for 5 with all 5 at-bats coming with runners in scoring position. So that was certainly disappointing to say the least. Top of the 8th, Ryan Sheriff comes on, an infield single, but then gets the double play ball to get out of the inning scoreless. Bottom of the 8th, the Rays go down 1-2-3. Wendell struck out, Adames struck out, and Kevin Kiermaier popped out, so not a great sight there. Top of the 9th, Ryan Sheriff gets another 1-2-3 inning, so a couple of quick innings of work for him. 21 pitches, has yet to allow an earned run, so that would take him out of play, obviously, for tomorrow, but you'd think somewhere along the line in the series in Baltimore we'll see some Sheriff. So he gets a couple of scoreless innings today. Pretty good to see. And then bottom of the 9th, we're headed to extras. The Rays started that inning down 2-1. Mike Brasso comes in to pinch hit for Michael Perez, who finished 0 for 3. And Brasso strikes out. I think today the Rays went 0 for 10 or something along those lines, did the right-handed hitter. So against a righty in Adam Voth, if I'm not mistaken, Austin Voth, the right-handed pitcher. The righty hitters were not good at all. I think Manny Margot was the biggest contributor to that. Again, 0 for 5 with all in scoring position. So he strikes out to start things. Then Meadows pops out. All of a sudden, you're down to your final out to Brandon Lau, and down to his final strike. 367 feet to right to make it 2-2, and then Yoshi struck out to send it to extra innings. They made the substitution, have Brett Phillips come in to come in for Yoshi to left field, so that Phillips would be the runner on second base in the bottom of the 10th. But we go to the top of the 10th. Nick Anderson looks human with the runner on second base. The first pitch, Anderson was a hung fastball at about 94. Definitely missed his spot. He hits a home run 427 feet to right field to make it 4-2. And then, of course, he strikes out Robles, Michael A. Taylor, and Knoll. So, that's the spot you want him in the 10th inning, because he's going to strike out 3 batters. Unfortunately, it came after a home run, so not great. It was really funny hearing him in the postgame. Didn't necessarily seem irritated, but just had a nonchalant attitude about it, and not in a bad way. I can maybe try and pull up the clip later in the show. But it was, I think, Mark Tompkin and some other guys asking him, it's like, how do you feel about the extra inning rule? This and that, runners on base. And he's like, oh, yeah, it doesn't matter. I got to get these guys out. That kind of attitude. So you really like to see it from him. He's a guy that's not necessarily a fan favorite, but I think he really should be. He's been probably one of the most automatic relievers the Rays have ever had. At this point, I think he's pitched 12 or 13 innings to give up his first earned run today. So, that's the definition of automatic. Struck out 3 batters in the inning today after giving up the home run. He never gets shaken off his spot. We saw that home game against the Marlins, his first game back off the injured list, and got himself into a little bit of a jam, but was able to stay cool and get out of it. So, he's a great asset. He takes the loss today, but you like his attitude. I think he's still looking good for the postseason. He's going to be a huge part. I'm sure he's going to be closing out some games for the Rays on clinching night, whether they have one, which would just be to clinch a postseason spot, or potentially a second clinching night to clinch the American League East. I would imagine Anderson would be on the mound on both of those nights if the Rays are able to get it. So the Rays go today into the bottom of the 10th, down 2 runs, and the offense stalls as you would expect. Brett Phillips, the runner at second base. McGowan comes on, and that was also another thing. They were going to put Brett Phillips on second base anyway because that's just his thing. He's a center field type. He's got speed. You don't want Sasugo standing on second base, but if I told you going into the 10th inning, it's a tie game, obviously. You're going to have Nick Anderson pitch the top of the 10th. You're thinking he's going to get 3 strikeouts. And then you start with Brett Phillips on second base, no outs, and probably a tie game. And if you can get him across, it's a walk-off win. So I think probably if that scenario plays out 10 times, I'm thinking that the Rays win that. I'm gonna be confident and say they win that situation 9 out of 10 times. But just unfortunately, Anderson hung the pitch. And accounted for a 2-run homer, which definitely hurt with the man on to start things. So, but the offense wasn't able to do anything anyway today, unfortunately. So Phillips at second base, Nate Lowe strikes out. It was a cement mixer pitch. It was just a really lazy kind of, I think, slider that caught a lot of the plate, and that's a pitch that Nate Lowe can really turn and drive. When he was struggling when he first came up from the from the minor league camp in Port Charlotte, and I think he was 0 for his first 12 or something along those lines. That was his problem, is there would be good pitches blowing by him, and he would just keep the bat on his shoulder. Now, he's since done a little bit better about that. He hit cleanup today and brought in the first run in the top of the first. He goes 1 for 2, 3 walks, 2 of them intentional. So, that's it. Again, that's a pitch that he should hit, and if he hits it out, it's a tie game, and who knows what happens in the 11th. But he doesn't hit it, and then Margot, of course, strikes out with a man sitting on second base, and Wendell strikes out on some pretty bad sliders that they should have easily taken. So you can hear it in my voice. I don't love the game today. It's not really going to impact much for the postseason. You want the Rays to clinch everything that they can. They're still in the running for the number 1 seed. Not that you necessarily want the number 1 seed because of the team that you might run into. I think the Rays would rather play a team like the Indians than, say, potentially the Blue Jays, but none of that is in the Rays' control, and all they can do is beat the teams that are in front of them. So who knows what that's going to look like. But they dropped the game today. Again, they're 6-7 in the month of September, so you don't love where they're at. It looks like they're probably going to be 3 games above the Yankees by the time that the night is done, as it looks like the Yankees are doing pretty good against the Blue Jays tonight. So not too much to talk about on tonight's show. I think we might cut it here rather shortly. We're going to take a break, though, and get you some baseball scores. We have a couple more things that we can talk about. We'll probably preview tomorrow's Thursday night football contest between the Browns and the Bengals. But other than that, unless anyone wants to call in at 877-566-1020 during the break, we'll just be on for a little bit longer. And we're going to take a quick break, again, give you some scores, and we will be right back. HBC. Just a couple of final scores in MLB action today. It was the Reds 1-0 over the Pirates in Game 1 of the doubleheader. It was the Cardinals 4-2 over the Brewers. Also final, the Dodgers 7-5 over the Padres. The Athletics 3, Rockies 1 in 10 innings. The Nationals 4-2 over the Rays. In current action, top of the 7th, the Marlins 8-4 over the Red Sox. In the 8th, Phillies 4, Mets 3. Also in the 7th, the Yankees 13-1 over the Blue Jays. In the 9th, the Royals 4-0 over the Tigers. In the 7th, the Orioles 5-1 over the Braves. And the 4th, it is the Twins 3, White Sox 1. Bottom 6, Rangers and Astros scoreless. In Game 2 of the doubleheader, it's the Brewers 4-0 over the Cardinals. And in the top of the 5th, it's the Indians and Cubs tied at 2.
Hey, sports fans! William's currently in the can, but he'll be right back. We're currently on a commercial break, so don't touch that dial. Remember, you can call us at 352-639-0036 or drop us a line on Twitter at WHBCStream to tell us what's on your mind. We want to talk sports. We want to get unruly. We want you to tell us what you think so we can argue. Anyway, when all that's said and done, please stay tuned for William's world-famous Around the XFL podcast and other projects that he's currently got in the works. Please visit WHBCStream.com, and thanks again for listening in.
Sports Radio 101.9 FM. Sports Radio 636. Sports Radio
HBC. And at 9:40, we are back on the William Haynes Show. Not a whole lot left to talk about. We talked Rays already. We may touch a little bit more on that, but just wanted to touch on maybe some other national sports stories. If you do want to talk, call in and talk Rays. It's not too late to do so. The number to call is 877-566-1020. I'd mentioned earlier in the Mets-Phillies game that Jacob deGrom left the game early. He pitched only 2 innings and comes out with a hamstring injury. He is slated to pitch one of the 3 games against the Rays, so who knows if that will shake out or not. The Mets are 4th place in the National League East in 6 games under 500, so they're going to need all they can get if they have any dreams playing October baseball. Some other sports stories. The Los Angeles Dodgers, after their win today, are the first team this season to clinch the playoffs. They're headed to the postseason for the 8th straight season. I think they still have a ways to go to clinch the division. But their 35-15 record is the best in the majors. Everybody knew going into this season that the Dodgers were going to be one of the best teams in the majors. I had maybe thought that the Yankees would be a tad better, but the injuries kind of held them back in that regard. But the Dodgers have played as expected, relatively speaking. So they'll be headed to the postseason, as we all know, and they're going to certainly be dangerous in that National League postseason spot. Who knows? They may be beatable. Whoever's going to play them is going to have to come to Dodger Stadium for a best of 3. So really, who knows how that's going to shake out. Also, in NBA news, really interesting. It was last night. It looks like it was a Game 7. It was the Denver Nuggets 104-89 over the Los Angeles Clippers. The Clippers held a 3-1 lead, and the Denver Nuggets came all the way back. Obviously, we know with the Clippers, probably the best wing combo in the NBA with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. Neither of them performed very good in the playoffs in the NBA. A lot of people were making fun of Playoff P, which I guess is Paul George's whatever nickname, but he played horrible in the playoffs. Kawhi Leonard was not as good as he was a season ago, closing out that series against the Sixers, which will go down in Toronto Raptors lore. So the Denver Nuggets, I don't think they stand much of a chance against the Los Angeles Lakers, to be totally honest with you. In the Western Conference Finals, it looks like it'll be LeBron James and Anthony Davis probably advancing to the finals against either the Heat or the Boston Celtics. Now, game one of that series in the Eastern Conference Finals between the Heat and the Celtics, it was the Miami Heat 117-114 winning game one in overtime. It was Bam Adebayo, I think, blocking a layup from Jason Tatum with the waning seconds of that game. So I think that would have given the Celts the lead, and so the Miami blocks it, and they go into overtime and win. The Heat, probably the hottest team in the NBA right now. The Celtics have done good on themselves. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. They've got all those young pieces that have been playing well in the playoffs for the last couple of years. They get rid of Kyrie Irving, and that seems like that might have actually helped them in the way of addition via subtraction. But with the Heat, certainly not the case for them. They bring in Jimmy Butler as a free agent signing during the offseason, and he's really carried their team. Duncan Robinson, kind of an unknown guy that they brought in, just hits threes like it's nobody's business. So they have guys all over the floor. They've got some really good bigs, obviously with Bam Adebayo kind of making a name for himself in this playoffs. So they're a pretty complete roster, and who knows, there's only been one game, and it was neck and neck all the way through. So we'll keep our eyes on that series as it goes down. And then the Clippers, they got buried today, as they should have. I mean, Kawhi Leonard makes the move to go over there instead of staying in Toronto, which, who knows, might have been the better move. But Kawhi was from that area in L.A. and wanted to go back. That's all fine. And then Paul George ends up following him along. I think they had to make a trade to get him from Oklahoma City after Paul George and Russell Westbrook broke up in OKC. So they had the tandem there in L.A. For the Clippers, but they didn't have much else. Doc Rivers, one of the better coaches in the NBA, wasn't able to get it done. Certainly blowing a 3-1 lead to an inferior team in the Nuggets. That wasn't the plan. And I think part of I didn't really watch much of the games, but I would imagine some of the success for the Nuggets was with Nikola Jokic, one of the best big men in the league, one of the last, I would say, probably true centers in the league. The Clippers don't really have any of those type of big men. They do a lot more small ball type stuff. So Nikola Jokic, the center, 25 years old. He is 7 feet and 285 pounds. I mean, that's an absolute unit. Can kind of bully guys in the paint. I think the Lakers defend against that a little bit better with JaVale McGee, not necessarily a great player, but he plays a decent defense. And then Anthony Davis, I guess he'd be considered a power forward, but would probably be defending Jokic in the post, I would imagine. So I would say I would probably take the Lakers in 5 or 6 games in that series to advance and play the winners of the Miami Heat and the Boston Celtics. Some other sports stories we have. I know we don't touch on a lot of college sports on the show, although I would guide you if you're interested potentially in a daily show, a daily podcast about Florida State athletics. I would send you over to FSU Sports Daily, run by yours truly, part of WHBC Stream. You can find it wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio. It's about 15-20 minute show every day, and all the college sports for Florida State, where I'm at right now. But a couple really college athletic stories that we have from a national perspective. NCAA men's and women's college basketball seasons can start November 25th, which is going to be the day before Thanksgiving. Usually they start mid-October or so, but obviously we're in a kind of a different world right now. The quote from one of the officials, Dan Gavitt, he's the NCAA Senior Vice President of Basketball. He said, by Thanksgiving week, the date of November 25th, 76% of all Division I schools will have either finished their fall semester completely or released the general student body for in-person instruction. So, I'm experiencing that. It looks like they're, after Thanksgiving, all the kind of in-person stuff is gone. So, so attendance, who knows? Maybe there won't be any fans of the games. That would certainly be a shame, but because that's, I think, more so in really almost any other sport. In college basketball, that's such a huge part of it. So hopefully, that'll be around in some sort, but who knows? But it looks like college basketball a little bit later than expected, but they'll be on their way back, and it doesn't look like really a whole lot of other kind of national sports stories. Oh, we do have one, but it was Bruce Arians. He came after Tom Brady a little bit for making some mistakes in the game against Tom Brady in the game against the Saints, and Brett Favre on whatever show he was on today criticized it a little bit. I don't know. It says on Tuesday, Pro Football Hall of Famer Brett Favre said on his radio show, Sirius XM Blitz, that unless the coach and the quarterback have an understanding, calling out Brady publicly can lead to tension down the road. And then, of course, Bruce Arians came and embraced that head on and said that he and Brady are fine. I think Brady kind of knew that he was in the wrong on some of that stuff. So I don't know, not much of a story, but anytime the Bucs these days are making national headlines, it's something I guess to talk about. And then also, we talked about it a little bit last night, but it looks like Big Ten football will be making a return. I thought there would be some sort of official announcement today, but there was not. I guess they're going to kind of delay it. But I think the hope is that they're going to be back. I think they want to say in early November, late October. I think the officials were saying it would take about 6 weeks to get them ready to return to play, so who knows how that's going to work out. Obviously, the hope for them is that they're going to be getting involved in the college football playoff, and I've got some thoughts about that, but I'll maybe save that for a little bit later. And really, I mean, I guess I can touch a little bit more on the Rays. We'll preview tomorrow's contest, and also, we'll preview Thursday Night Football. So as we kind of finish up the show here, if you want to call in with any of your thoughts that you have, the number to call is 877-566-1020. At WHBC Streams the Twitter. I'd recommend you also follow that as well. As we tweet the shows when we go live and all that good stuff. So we'll do Thursday Night Football first at 8:20 from Cleveland. I believe no fans there. It's the 0-1 Browns hosting the 0-1 Bengals. The battle of, I guess, Ohio. The over/under is set at 43.5. The line 6 points in favor of the home team Browns. So I don't necessarily agree with that. And it looks like there's tickets selling for $150. So who knows? There may be some fans sprinkled in and out. Not that it's really going to make a difference in the NFL this year, at least with the small amount. But Joe Burrow in his first game, a bit of a rough first start for him, although he did give him a chance to win under 200 yards and an interception, but he had that long kind of touchdown run. And they in the 16-13 loss to the Chargers at home for the Bengals, Burrow drove them all the way down to the field. They got inside, I think, the 20, and Randy Bullock missed a 31-yard field goal, which is shorter than an extra point these days. So that certainly wasn't on him. That game should have gone to overtime against the Chargers. And I really liked kind of the fight that the Bengals put up. Obviously, they had their worst record in the NFL a season ago with Zach Taylor, the new head coach, I guess the Sean McVay disciple. And I guess they didn't have a lot on the roster. The offensive line did not do well at all against the Chargers pass rush. That was certainly a weakness. But for the Browns, they took a 38-6 shellacking in Baltimore last week. So the fact that they're a 6-point favorite, home field advantage doesn't matter. I mean, it's a 3-hour drive anyway. So I don't necessarily get that. If you're a betting man, I would probably point you in the direction of Bengals plus the 6 points, but I'm sure we'll probably get slammed on that. There's plenty of other NFL action at 1 o'clock. Again, the Bucs will be hosting the Carolina Panthers, but as we'll start to do over the course of this NFL season, we'll preview those shows on Friday and give you all the picks against the spreads as we did in Week 1. I'm not sure exactly how well we did. I know we missed some, but I think we did hit some good picks as well. And then we'll wrap the show up previewing tomorrow's games, as it will be a doubleheader. The first starting at 4:35. It is between Blake Snell and it looks like Dean Kramer will start at least one of the games for the Baltimore Orioles. So for all intents and purposes, we'll just say that he'll start game one, as that's typically kind of in the conventional sense of how you would approach that. So Blake Snell is 4-1 with a 3.23 ERA. Dean Kramer 1-0 with a 1.64 ERA. We look at Blake Snell's last start It was against the Boston Red Sox, and that was the 11-1 win with the 9 lefties. In that game, one of his better starts of the season. He goes 5 1/3 of no-run ball, allows 5 hits, 2 walks, only strikes out 5, which isn't necessarily like him. 103 pitches thrown. The strikes weren't exactly there. That's why he didn't go deep into the ball game. I'll keep saying it every time we talk about Snell because it's the expectation that he puts on himself. But he's a guy that says that he wants to go, 7 or 8 innings into a ball game, and he's not gone more than 5 2/3 yet this season. I know it took him a while to get stretched out, but he's really been, I think, stretched out for probably the last 5 starts or so. So in a 7-inning doubleheader, especially with the way the bullpen is right now, I think that if he could go 7 innings against an Orioles lineup that's not great, so be it. He has 1 start against the Orioles this year. That came on July 31st, so it's a much different world. He went 3 innings, 3 earned runs on 4 hits, 2 home runs, no walks, though, so but 5 strikeouts. He only threw 53 pitches in that game, so not quite indicative, but he does have a history against the Baltimore Orioles this season. And for Dean Kremer, he is, he is 1-0 in the season with a 1.64 ERA. He's only had a couple of starts to his name, and it looks like they have both come against the New York Yankees. For his first time out, went 6 innings with an earned run on a hit, and in the second start, his last time out, he went 5 innings with an earned run on 4 hits, 3 walks. He has 3 walks in both of his starts. He went 99 pitches his last time out, so he's probably one of the youngsters that they just wanted to bring up. But 2 good starts against the Yankees, so he'll be tough. Certainly against the Rays, and who knows what either team will do in Game 2. I've been looking kind of on some stuff for Mark Tompkin, but he hasn't really covered any of that approach. If you follow at WHBC Stream on Twitter, we'll obviously come back, and if there's anything like that, we'll tweet it out. So that game is at 4:35, and the doubleheader will be about 40 minutes after that. So a couple of games that we'll have to talk about. I'll be able to watch the first one and cover that 7-inning game. I'm not so sure. I'll keep my eye on the second game. I'm going to be covering here in Tallahassee, the Florida State Seminoles and the Notre Dame Fighting Irish women's soccer facing off in the season opener. I'm going to be covering that on site for my FSU Sports Daily podcast. So again, I'll catch the first game and take the notes and all that, but I'll be keeping an eye on the second game of the doubleheader, and we'll be able to break that down as well. So certainly a weird day, 2 games of baseball, but how can you complain about that? It's going to be 5 games in 4 days in Camden Yards, a place that the Rays have really struggled the last couple of years. Really, as far as a preview, it's tough because it's a doubleheader, but for Game 1, if it is Kremer or righty, they're going to stack the lefties. I would imagine they would kind of stagger whoever plays. So, Meadows would only play a game. Lau would only play a game. You kind of get the idea. I mean, some of the youngsters like Adames may play both, but I don't know exactly. They may try and do it where maybe Adames plays one at shortstop and Wendell plays the other. That sort of thing. Now, the bullpen is pretty taxed, and that was kind of the problem that I had with the early pull on Fleming. But whatever. Today they used Fairbanks on an inning pitched. He could probably go on a back-to-back. Thompson could go. Let's see. A couple of days ago, it was Loop, Sheriff, and Anderson who pitched today as well. So those guys would be out. So you have in your disposal Castillo. I would not go Drake. He pitched 23 times, and it was in his return. So you've got Castillo, Thompson, some of those guys. I don't know. They're gonna have to. John Curtis could give him some bulk innings. I would imagine Sleggers is gonna pitch some bulk innings at some point. But it's really gonna be a game of mix and match. They have not announced who the second starter is gonna be. If it was a 4-game set, it looks like it would have been. It would have been Snell in Game 1, then Glasnow, Morton, and Yarbrough. So probably now some openers mixed in and things like that, so who knows. But we will be on at Thursday night. I can't tell you exactly what time. Obviously, the hope would be, I'm going to try and get on as shortly after Game 2 as I can, but who knows when I'll come back from that soccer game. But again, follow the Twitter at WHBC Stream and all that. So we'll be with you again tomorrow. A bit of a weird show today. It was weird afternoon baseball. Not so much to talk about, but we still got the hour program. I want to thank everyone who tuned into the show today. And we'll be taking your calls more tomorrow and doing that sort of thing. Lightning Game 6 against the Islanders. Hopefully they can lock that up. We're going to have that to talk about as well. Potential clinching night for them to go to the Stanley Cup Final. And then over the next couple of days, talking some NFL football, Bucks, all of that. So a lot of great things to talk about as far as Tampa Bay sports goes. As always, we'll be on the air tomorrow, and we'll talk to you then.
Sports Radio 101.9 FM and Sports Radio 66. The Fan.
HBC.